Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today.
Hi, Heather.
Hi.
Today I have H.M. Gooden, author, with me. She is primarily a young adult fantasy paranormal writer, but she also has some paranormal cozy mystery, some collections of poetry, I believe, as well.
Yeah, and some nonfiction. A lot of it's sort of medicine related. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Well, what would you like to talk about first? Do you want to start with your newest release or you want to start at the beginning?
Uh, I mean, we could start at the beginning. I think that probably makes the most sense. But
Okay.
yeah, and I think like many people, I've been an avid reader my whole life, and it was always one of those things you go, someday I'm going to write a book. And then that someday just happened to be about 2 o'clock in the morning with the third kid in 4 years. And I was, you know, exhausted. And I'm like, if I don't do it now, I'll have spent my life looking after everybody else. And so that's kind of where I got the motivation to just do it. And I think at the time I'd been reading a magazine for writers, and I saw that NaNoWriMo was coming up, and so I wrote my first book in a month. And
Wow.
I mean, it didn't come out right away. I think that was 2015. And then I was going to be happy just to write one, and then as these things do, it kind of turned into a trilogy, which then turned into a series, and then I wanted to see what those guys were doing, so I just kept going.
Amazing. Yes, we have similar stories. Like young kids, I'm physically exhausted, my brain feels dead, but there's this creative part of me that needs to like have space.
Like if you don't express yourself in some way, you might die.
Yes, you might die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, I feel like that when I'm tired anyway, so I'm not sure.
Well, we hope you won't die.
Yeah.
So, let's start with your first series. Tell us about the premise, the characters, the worlds.
So I initially started off, I since I was probably a teenager myself, I'd had a recurring dream about probably the place that I used to go after skating. I'm 5'10". I was not built to be a figure skater, but that's what you do when it's winter for 6 months of the year is you skate, right? So I spent a lot of time at the hospital after skating because I'd sprain this or that, or oh, is this broken or whatever. And we would always be the only people there. And I think it buried into my subconscious and scared me. And for whatever reason, that sort of sparked the book that I wrote first, which is about a girl named Kat who is in a car accident, and she ends up in the hospital unconscious for, I think it was a couple of days. And during her time when she's unconscious, she's has sort of an out of body experience, like an astral projection kind of thing. And she sees this alternate side of the real world, and she finds out she can kind of see auras, and she can tell if somebody's sick or if they're evil or whatever, and it just kind of goes from there. So the first book is called Dream of Darkness, and it's because when she's in this she sees this dark presence on the horizon in her small little bucolic town, and it's up to her and her sister to kind of figure it out. And she's the new kid in town, but there's this one other girl that she kind of pals around with whose mom is a nurse at the hospital where she was, and then the three of them kind of figure out what's going on, and then the next couple of books follow them through to grade 12 when they graduate, and then the rest of the books kind of follow the other characters.
Oh, neat. So do they get new challenges in each book?
Every time they get bigger, right?
Okay.
So the second book, they go to San Francisco, which is the big city. And then in the third book, they go to Scotland to where it all began. And yeah, and there's
And is it
witches.
the same evil that they're
It's a bigger one. It's like
okay.
the evil's boss every time,
Oh, okay. The evils.
right?
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, we defeated this guy, but he wasn't actually bad, but this guy was bad, and it made him bad.
Mm,
So
interesting. Do you ever have the backstory for like the evil of the evils?
sometimes, after I finished writing the first three, I ended up going back and writing a prequel about her grandma. So it just goes in all directions. And then I wrote prequels to other people in the stories, like where her grandma got her powers. And it's just, yeah, it's like a
That's so
spider web.
fun though. That's so fun. I love those. Yeah. So when I'm assuming when Kat wakes up, she still has this ability
Mhm.
after
But
her.
it changes.
Oh, it changed. Okay. So don't give too much away, but yeah.
Yeah. So she finds out she comes from a long line of people that are not entirely normal.
Okay.
And her
But
mom
it's
knew nothing about it.
right. And
Just
is it
about her
an
dad's.
urban contemporary setting then?
I would say this one is probably more that paranormal, YA, that coming of age, set in high school stuff. They've got the usual challenges. She's a bit of an introvert. She doesn't like big groups. She turns red in public. The things that happen to all of us at some point in life.
Fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. So that's how many books are in that like series of crossover series?
I've flip-flopped. So it was initially going to be a trilogy, and then I was thinking, oh, well, I want to talk about the other girls. And now I'm like, maybe that should just be kind of the overarching world and then the trilogy. But it ends up there's five main girls by the end of the fifth book. And then they get their own books. So in total, I think it's nine with some side stories.
Okay.
And then I've written some spin-off series based on those. So
Fun, very fun. And
yeah.
so how do you write? Is it first person or third person or what viewpoint are we getting?
I think it depends on the story, but it's kind of mostly that like third person omniscient kind of thing. I'm
Okay.
not even sure how to write second person.
Oh, I don't know, I think anybody, it's only first or third that I know. So.
I think I read one book that was second person, or I've read the example and I go, oh, I don't like that. So I know I'm not writing in second, but I think it depends on what I'm writing, whether it's first or third. But third is a little bit more fun because you can head hop a little bit.
Right, yeah, you can see different people's points of view, so, or all the people's points of view at
Yeah.
one time.
Yeah.
Neat. And so where is this going next? What do you feel like? Are you continuing the world?
So I have two more books that need to be published, which would finish off that kind of the eight books in the main one. And then I have another trilogy that I need to finish. The pandemic set me behind a little bit because I went from working regular people hours to 100-hour weeks at work. So it's really been a struggle to get the same kind of time that I had. There's only so many hours in a day. So that's where I struggled. And that's where I kind of started writing a few more nonfiction things because I could do those in 5 or 10 minute chunks. I tend to get angry when I don't have longer than that to write the fiction because you just get into it and then you got to go to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that definitely. Yeah. And if I'm in a project, like I'm thinking about it all the time in my back of my head. I was driving the other day and I got somewhere and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't remember my whole drive because I was thinking of this other thing. So then I thought that was really dangerous. So I needed to pay attention.
Well, see, one of the ways that I wrote so many was I actually would dictate while driving to work.
Okay.
And I didn't find that distracting because it was no worse than having somebody in the car you talk to. And
Mhm.
I have about a 25-minute drive. The secret is you have to be able to edit it when you get there because otherwise you have no idea what you said.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The one secret that I did discover when you're using dictation is if you don't understand what the sentence says, because it doesn't make sense, say it really fast, and then your ear might figure out what you had said.
What you said, because it's hard to remember, right? Yes.
Yeah, so that worked well when I lived in a city, but less so with the dead zones where I am right now.
Oh, oh well.
Yeah. So I'm
Well,
hoping that this coming spring, summer, I'll have more free time again. We have more people at work, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I get to settle in and I don't know. There's something so it feels indulgent or juicy to just get to sit down and just dive into a new story. So
and how do you organize your worlds? Do you have like sheets and sheets, or you have Excel spreadsheets, or is it all just in your head? Or
it's in my head, and then sometimes I'll go back and go, wait, did they do that? And then I'll just go back. Oh yeah, okay, that's what they did in that book.
okay,
So
so you just look at the book and read what you wrote before.
yeah. And I think it helps because I've written them all at once. So it wasn't like it's 20 years in between and I forgot.
Okay.
They're nice, short, quick, fun reads. They're not intended to, I don't want to cry anymore. I just want to read fun books that are escapist and everything is good at the end, you know?
Okay, that was gonna be my next
Yeah.
question. Like,
I
oh,
hate cliffhangers. I just want happy ever afters where everybody gets magic.
fun, fun. I love those.
Yeah. So,
And do you have I mean, do you kill off any characters, or do you have
and just the bad ones,
okay.
mostly just the bad ones. And I'll make it look like somebody might die, but I can't kill them off. Why would you do that? That's like real life. I don't want it to be like real life.
Well, yeah, in paranormal and fantasy worlds, the great thing is somebody might not be dead. They can always come back.
But you never know when they've got like 9 lives because they're part cat or something. And
Well,
actually, in the second book, I almost kill off cat,
mm,
but I don't.
okay, good, good.
Because I
No,
mean,
you
she's
can't kill
a
main
character,
characters. Yeah, no.
right?
We had one example. We won't speak about that example.
Mm.
It's funny. I always say that, like in fantasy and paranormal, you can kill somebody off and they might come back. But I think that used to be a line in soap operas too. Like when I was young with
Yeah.
my grandmother watching the soap operas, they would like it would come back like a year later. Somebody would just fake their death and they were in hiding and they always come back.
Like Luke and Laura or something.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Laura died a couple times and then she was evil and then she got her memory back and then like I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. But my grandma watched them. I think it was called I'm actually cooking and I'm only half paying attention.
Well, yeah, my grandmother was ironing, so that was like her ironing treat, you know.
Yeah.
And she ironed sheets, ironed handkerchiefs. She just ironed all the time, but I think it's because she wanted to watch her shows.
I think people used to do that because they thought they were supposed to. Yeah. And then we just got dryers. And then you just take it out and hang it up, and then you don't need to iron.
Well, my sheets that like at the top get kind of bunched up. And one time I actually thought of ironing them. I was like, no, 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 never mind. It's okay.
I don't because they're just going to get bunched up again. I prefer not to make my bed. I just sort of make a giant nest.
Well, the quilts are good for that. So,
Exactly. I went to Germany and Switzerland when I was about 21 or 22, and we stayed in the Black Forest, and they slept with the windows open, and it was end of April, early May, and it was really cold. And it was the best sleep I'd ever had because it was just this fitted sheet on the bed and this giant down comforter duvet thing. And they just plopped it on the top of the bed. And that's what you slept with. And it was the best sleep I remember having in my whole life.
something to be said for that. I live in cold Colorado, so I sort of do that too.
I don't want to talk about how cold it is here. It's been terrible. The last 2 weeks, it was minus 45 Celsius. With the wind chill, it was something like minus 50. And all I know is Fahrenheit to Celsius, minus 40 is minus 40.
Yeah, that's
That's
bad.
all I remember.
Yeah, that's bad.
It's bad. The buses were not running, but the schools were not canceled.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we'll circle back to your types of characters. So are your different characters, do they have different abilities?
Yes. So Kat has this ability to read auras. She discovers down the road that she can heal as part of that because if you can see the energy, you can change the energy, right? Her sister discovers that, well, one of her things is she's the charismatic older sister, right? So she wants to be an actress and do all this, but she actually discovers she has the power of charisma. So she can actually influence other people to do what she wants. So then she has this, big debate. Should I be an actress or is that cheating? Another one has the ability to do earth magic. So there's sort of an elemental theme. There may also be some ability to change into different animals.
Oh, fun.
Why not? So it's sort of, if the earth element, it's sort of an earth animal. One of them is water dragon. So that spinoff, she has triplets. I'm really mean to people that get romantic before they're married, and they seem to end up pregnant a lot and have babies. So
Even
triplets
in
definitely a
even in
punishment.
YA books, or they are
I
they
mean, there's nothing there, but they're like, this is 5 years later, so
oh,
they're in the
okay. So
teens,
they've
right?
graduated to adulthood at this
More
point.
like a NA, but it's too tame to be called NA.
Yeah, okay, right. Yeah.
The
Clean
new adult is a
adult.
little spicy sometimes.
Oh,
So, and my mom reads my books, so I have to keep it relative because I don't want to have those discussions.
yeah.
It's okay if my kids read it, but I can't handle my mom reading
Okay,
it.
so back to punishing people who do you give them triplets? Are they dragon triplets?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so I did a lot of research for that, and the closest I could find was Komodo dragons. So not only does she have triplets, but it's a 6-week pregnancy. She does not have much time to get used to
Oh
it.
wow. So
It's
she
terrible.
knows she's gonna have triplets beforehand? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They had to go back to Norway where her partner is from. But it's okay because he comes from a long line of dragons. So his mom talks her through things.
Okay, it'll be okay. Wow. Yeah, so I
It,
have 3 kids under 3 and a set
yeah,
of twins. So I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
right? I know. My first pregnancy, everyone said, "Oh, I hope you have twins." And I said, "Why do you hate me? Why would you say that? Like, if it happens, it happens, but don't wish for that. It's a
No.
lot of work." No,
Especially in a first pregnancy when you don't know anything.
well, and I had mine each individual, but my oldest was 3.5 when I had the youngest. And I
Yeah.
planned that.
I
It
think
was
that's worse
not
than
well,
twins.
it
No,
was
it's worse than
not well
twins.
planned. I had the oldest had just started walking the day before I went to have the second. And then I had a 3.5 and a 2.5 when I had a newborn. And I don't remember 5 years.
Yeah, my that's what my husband says. He doesn't remember the first at least 4 years. So
No, I went back to work when my youngest was a week old to get out of the house. I love them very much, but I needed a few hours out of the house because they all wanted to be on you.
yeah,
Yeah, it was a lot.
that is a lot. So we're going back to the magic. Is it generational magic? Is this something you inherit, or do sometimes, hi baby, do sometimes the people get changed like vampires or
No, it's more like if you look at more of the traditional Scottish folklore, like Robin Goodfellow makes an appearance more than once. And there's a lot of the like things like Selkies and Gilly Doos and there's some of the ones that you would remember, but then, their favorite teacher turns out he's the Gilly Doo, which is this old man of the forest in Scotland who's rarely seen, so nobody really knows what he looks like. And then they go to Scotland and there's another guy who's a brownie, but he's a university professor. He's just really cute and really short, but he dresses all in tweed. And so it's a lot of the characters you might know if you went through that phase when you were a kid where you're obsessed with fairy tales and folklore. And I think it's Andrew Lang. He wrote all of the Blue Book of the Fairies, the Pink Book. I don't know if you had those when you were a kid.
They seem remotely familiar, but yeah,
They always had them at the library, and I think I read every color.
fun. Yeah, in my last book, I had this spell that required 12 different types of beings, basically what I call them beings. So I had to do a lot of research to figure out like what beings I could get in the contemporary world because it's
Ah.
set in the human realm, contemporary times. So, but yeah, and so Selkies was one of them. And yeah, but it was really fun doing all that research. And I've published
Oh,
some of it on my blog. So I'll have
yeah.
to point you there and maybe
Yeah.
pick your brain for some more characters too.
You know what? I've always been fascinated with folk tales and fairy tales from around the world, and that was one of the things that I really wanted to put in my books. And I think it's always a little challenging when you're from one cultural background to try to do it well in another one that you didn't grow up in. But I hope I've done an okay job. And I had a few of my friends do a little bit of, um, you know, cultural safety reading for me. And I didn't necessarily tell them that's what they were doing. I just wanted their opinion on what they thought of the book. And I figured if it didn't make them mad, it was probably not too bad. But the one girl's from Pakistan originally and lives in the UK, and her mom is absolutely my friend's mom. And my friend just laughed her face off because she was like, "Oh, that is exactly like my mom." Like, well, perfect. That's who she's supposed to be. So, and that involves the gin. So, because that would be more traditionally from that area of the world, they do a big thing at Petra, and yeah.
Neat.
So,
Well, that your books sound amazing. I can't wait to dive in. Tell everyone where we can find you and your books.
well, you can find me pretty much anywhere online under the name H.M. Gooden. I've got some poetry out there. I've got that series, which is probably my big one. I've got a few other smaller series that I've written, but I would say that all of my fiction is very much based around fantasy, happy endings. Some are romance, some are not, but there's a lot of power of friendship stuff because honestly, I think friendships are the most important relationships we ever have. And if you talk to any adults that have kids, what do they complain about is they don't have enough friendships.
It's very hard once you grow up, right?
Well, and you're busy with life and work and kids and parents and everything. And man, sometimes I wish I could be back in high school just hanging out with friends. So
Yeah, it was
not
hard.
the drama part.
Yes,
I want
definitely.
to feel 18 with the lack of pain
Right. There
and
you
able to eat a whole pizza without heartburn. That
go.
would be great. And hang out with good friends.
Wonderful. So name all your series for us so we can have those in our mind.
I'm gonna forget some. The big one would be The Rise of the Light. I have another series called um, Destiny Found. I think it's the Destiny series. I have nonfiction, the Poetry in a Pandemic series, which is my most recent one. I have another book called Passages, which came out, I think, in 2019, and that's sort of reflections on death and dying and dementia. I do work with a lot of people near the end of life in long-term cares, so a lot of it is, I think, processing. So the nonfiction is very much related to the humanities, like the medical humanities. And then I've been in several different anthologies with other authors, and there was a another nonfiction that's published through Kent State Press University with other female physicians, which is wonderful. I was so happy to be part of that. And I think I forgot something, but that's probably about 20 or so right there. So it's probably
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
that's interesting. You're the second physician I've talked to today who's
Oh,
also a fan. Well, she was a YA dystopian writer, but dystopian is sort of fantasy
the
too.
same. It's just the less happy endings
Yeah.
and less happy beginnings.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, I can get behind a dystopian as long as there's still more of a happy ending.
Mhm.
Don't want everyone to die.
Happy-ish for now, maybe is what it, if you were translating it to a romance, it would be happy-ish for now.
Yeah, yeah. Or like we're building a better world together now.
Yeah, we see the hope for the future.
Like I love the big dystopian series, but also I really don't want to cry during things. And yeah, those ones do make you. So they're good on a day where you do want a little cry.
So you would describe yours as very, very light. That's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, my kids have read them and they thought they were a little bit scary in places. So I think they're not super scary, but that was when they were like 10 or 11. And I do have a lot of adults that quite enjoy them, and I think it's that escapism part, right? So it's written for anybody grade 6 and up that just wants to run away somewhere magical where they don't have to think about the real world scary stuff.
Well, I am definitely in. I
Perfect.
think a lot of our listeners will be. Again, HM Gooden Author is your website.
Yep. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not on there very often because, the whole work problem, but I do always love to hear from readers. And yeah, HM Gooden. You can find me on Amazon, on Kobo, any of the big booksellers. They'll be there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for being here. And next time you publish a book, make sure and come back.
I will. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.